My name's Jill Rowe, and in this episode of the Different Podcast, I talk to Steve Chalk about what gets us up in the morning. We chat about purpose, what it is and what it isn't, and how it shows up in hard work and in our relationships with one another. We recognise how we all play our part in achieving a vision, doing what we can to bring our best to the work we do. We realise the importance of being wisdom rich. It was fun spending time having this conversation. We really hope and pray this episode helps you to keep nudging forward. Welcome to the next episode of the podcast. This is classic because, sorry, I'm joking already in the beginning. But basically what we're going to talk about is what gets us up in the morning. And Steve's just been yawning for the past.
Right, just sat here yawning. Anyway,
which has been so encouraging for me that's how you feel.
It's been a long day, Jill.
I know, but, it makes me think that you just adore my company.
I do.
So, Steve, what gets you up in the morning?
Well, what got me up in the morning this morning was an alarm clock. I've just got a new phone. It's got this horrendous alarm on it. I got to, get a jingle-wingly one, but it was, it sounded like a full-on attack.
Get out the building.
But I had to get up early this morning to write an email. So that's why a big email. I don't mean a little, hello, how are you? Like this big plan I had to put into some people. And I've been meaning to do it for some days, but there are other stuff going on. And so I got up and I did that and I got it out the way, which was great. And then I on Mondays, it's a Monday.
It is a Monday.
Yeah. And Wednesdays and Fridays, I often, normally, unless I've got to do something else, do a workout with my mate from GMTV days. His name's Mr. Motivator.
Hey, yeah. Lycra!
Yeah. He doesn't come around my house. Or I don't go around his house. We got this Zoom link thing. Actually, we started doing this together about 3 years ago.
During COVID?
Back end of, perhaps it was during. I don't know. I can't remember. We've been doing it a long time.
Yeah. Does he make you dress up?
I don't dress up like him, and I tell him he'd look a lot better if he didn't. No, he's fantastic,
brilliant, isn't he?
But then we were doing this thing, and then after COVID, I think, about a year ago, we decided that to invite a load of other people in. So now Derek, that's Mr. Motivator's real name, Derek. Derek does this thing in the mornings, and it's great. It's become part of his. It's part of his thing.
That's brilliant. Well done.
So I still go and do this with him whenever I can.
That's fantastic. However, I think
6:30, still 7:00.
That's impressive.
Yeah. Then I have breakfast, rushed, and then I walk to work, and
do some calls.
And I did some calls on the way, and more meetings, and then I've been in meetings all day until now. It's joyous.
So I reckon though that underneath all of that, it isn't actually doing exercise with Mr. Motivator or writing an email that actually gets you up. Because, come on, Steve, I'm not going to tell people your age, but lots of people start to slow down.
When they're as ancient.
When they're as old as you. And, but there's something.
I'm 68. That's
just a public announcement.
Yes, 68. 68. Yeah.
But there's something else, isn't there, that gets us up? You get up in the morning, and there's purpose.
I've got an internal purpose. I'm very lucky, really, aren't I? I think because I've always had, not always, since the age of 14. That's a long time now. I've had this. Since the age of 14, I've known
what you're about,
why I'm here, and Mark Twain probably said this to you before, but I love this quote from Mark Twain. He said, there are only two important days in your life, the day you get born and the day you find out why. And I was fortunate enough to find out why at the age of 14, which is amazing because, I found out. It's not that I worked it out.
No.
It's a gift that's given to you. And I have many friends, who are in their 50s and 60s and still haven't quite found out why. They can't answer that question. And so I'd always say it's a gift of God to me that on one particular night, at the age of 14, it was like, boom, that's why you're here. Yeah. And then all I've had to do is live in line with that, which I've struggled to do sometimes. But I've always, even when I've wandered off the old path, I've known where the path was.
Yeah. I think, so my story's not as fancy as yours.
Yeah.
But, I wasn't walking past a football club at 14 and all the rest of it. But it was definitely when I was about 14 that I also had this sense of, I remember hearing somebody read something out. It was actually a bit from the Old Testament part of the Bible. And it was in Isaiah. And it just said, spend yourself on behalf of the poor, which there's a heavy dose of patronage in there, which I dislike. But when I was about 14, I was like, oh, there's a way, that there's something for me to do in life. There's something, what if I just navigate it around trying to work out what that can look like and help others in working out what that looks like. And it was, I can remember where I was. I can remember, and then I can remember those moments where it felt that, then that's right. That's right. Just keep shaping up around that. And I think you're right. It's a gift. But like you say, for loads of people, that doesn't happen.
Yeah. But I also think in our over-individualised world, we can put it on everybody that they ought to have some great passion and some wonderful, great sense of calling, when in actual fact, we are born for community and born for team. And if you have everybody thinking, I know exactly where to go, everybody's racing over the place and doesn't work together. And it's one of the things I constantly say to people, it's not about what I'm going to achieve. No. It's what we do together and how we build that together. And we play different roles in that team, don't we? Yeah. Not everyone's a captain of the team, but everybody has a huge part to play in that team. Equally important.
Yeah. So for you, Steve, you walked in to this space where we're recording these. And I think it's been a lot of your days are pretty, very full on. And but, you walked in and there was a slight sigh of relief to be in a space where it wasn't a meeting and it was where
it wasn't a committee.
And there was no agenda. Yeah. And so how, over the years, I'm sure, and I know, there have been lots of moments where even that sense of purpose that you have and all the rest of it, like it must at times be a struggle to get up in the morning and go, right, let's go again. Like how
sometimes it is. And actually walking around here, to be honest, because I came from another building that Oasis occupies nearby, and I've been, in meetings being quizzed about finance and how we haven't got enough money for this and the deficit on that and the risk on this and again all that kind of thing. And I even wandering around the corner, I just thought, oh dear, I don't know, who can I like, So it's like tough. It's hard, isn't it? When I arrived, you were all kind of saying to me, oh, that's great because the stuff we do changes the world. And it doesn't always feel like that when you're in the middle of it. That's the truth. It's just hard, slog. And somehow you've got to hold on to, look up at the horizon. Don't get yourself buried in the quagmire you feel that you're in, the valley that you're in, but keep looking up.
So do you speak that to yourself? Like, do you,
haul yourself, to haul yourself through, I think. I don't want to talk about me too much. I just think to myself, I'm often asked, you may have heard me asked, this will sound so miserable. People say, what do you really want to do, Steve? I mean, what do you want to do? And I can't even work out what I want to do anymore. I really can't. I'm just joking. You see, there you go. I'm not joking about that. I just think what I want to do is I want to get as far as I can possibly get before I snuff it, so that you would have heard me say this, because I really feel this, that it's, one man's ceiling is another man's floor, to mix the metaphor. So, you create this thing, you get that far, and then someone else starts from that point and can build on it. Or you run the race and you run an extra 100 meters or whatever, and the next guy starts from there. So we all carry the baton for a bit, don't we? And we hand over to someone else. We're all here and gone. Life is temporary. It's just, can I get that extra bit out of the tank, for the sake of the overall vision? Yeah.
There's,
does that sound dreadful?
No, it doesn't sound, no, I think it's really important. I think it's really important. And I think it's about we do what we can every day to bring our best, don't we? To how far we can get and how we are. And I think it's the joy of being the founder, Steve, of Oasis
I was talking to someone who's become a friend of mine over the last few years, which I'm very privileged in. It's the chairperson of Palace Football Club.
I knew he'd mention that.
Yeah, no, well, I only tell you that story, not say I know the chairperson of Palace Football Club, is because we run schools in Croydon. And actually, my story started when I realised what I should do with life when I was walking past Crystal Palace Football Club when I was a kid. Anyway, through somebody else, I had the chance of meeting Steve Parrish, his name is, and we got chatting one night, and he said this to me at one stage, because he was asking me about the work that Oasis does with young people and et cetera, and he said, "Well, I've got this problem." He said, and the problem is this: we got these kids, in our club. But then he said, every Premier League club, I guess every football club has got this. He said, you scout kids and they're brilliant players. I mean, they are magic on the ball. They can do anything. But the problem is they can control their ball, but not their behaviour. They can control the ball and juggle it around, but they lose their temper and they can lash out and push someone or kick someone or shove them over. And then he said, you can't play them very often because it's a red card and you lose 3 points. And, oh dear, if you relegated and all the rest of it. So you can't play them. He said, but the other problem is you can't sell them because everybody else knows they push people over and punch them and kick them. So he said, what are we going to do about that then? And in actual fact, Palace and Oasis now work together, have done for some years, and we supply the education to the young players at Palace in the Palace Academy. And that's because education, we think of it as education. What is education is a great question. Everyone needs a good education. But then we know and say, but what is education? And education isn't so much about maths and history and English, and as important all those things are, but it's about who am I? What's my purpose? What's my purpose? How do I understand myself and the way I tick? And so into the work we do with these young players, of course the curriculum, as you traditionally understand it, is important, but that's knowledge. What's really important is the wisdom of understanding yourself. What causes me to lose my rag, get annoyed, get frustrated? Understanding how you tick, how your brain works. It's a strange thing, if you're a young football player, you know all about your biceps and your quads and, kind of et cetera, et cetera. You understand how your body works. Now, you need to warm up and then you need to cool down and, stretch. You understand all of that.
Nutrition.
But how's your brain work? What?
Thought about that.
Has what I think, have my thoughts and my motivations got anything to do with how my brain works? The answer is yes.
Absolutely.
So beginning to understand yourself and what motivates you and what triggers you and what gets you up in the morning and what doesn't get you up in the morning and what depresses you and what brings you joy and why that is. It's all an important part of doing work on yourself.
Yeah.
You got to be introspective.
Yes.
As well as looking out.
Yeah. And the teenage brain it's at that stage where questions about belonging, purpose, who am I becoming, they're all like, they're all such vital questions. And yet, often, you're kind of saying this, the education in mainstream education, it doesn't get the central place that it should, does it? Those purpose and meaning questions can get pushed well out to, well, that's if we've got time, we'll talk about purpose and meaning. But then what we grow up with is, even in not in football academy schools, but in mainstream schools, you end up with people who have qualification but don't have character in which those qualifications are held, which can sometimes explain, I think, some of the mess we perhaps find ourselves in.
All you've got to do is look at public life and look at some people who went to extremely expensive schools and yet struggled to tell the truth, struggled to hold together a relationship, etc., etc. All of those things. And that's about the meaning of life, isn't it? That's about purpose. That's about who we are. Knowledge is a good thing. It's great if I know when the king burnt the cakes or when the Second World War started, and who won the Battle of Waterloo and all
good
of
for
that.
A pub quiz.
Yeah, it's very handy, but you can find out all those things on Google instantly and anything else you want to know. What you can't discover from Google is a sense of who you are and where you fit. You can't, you can get knowledge rich, but you can't get wisdom rich. You can't develop a skill with relationships, etc., etc. You can't do any of those things. It's a strange thing, I always think. We realise that if you go to a school, of course, Oasis runs 54 of them at the moment. If you go to a school, we never assume, no one assumes that just being in a building where there's a great maths teacher will make you good at maths. You've got to sit in that maths lesson and you've got to work at it. But we somehow assume that if you just hang around in a building where there's a kind person or a generous person or a wise person or a humble person or whatever, you're somehow going to get all this by osmosis. We need to work very hard at those things, understanding ourselves and our motivations and coming to a sense of purpose in life.
So what you're saying is actually it's through developing our self-awareness.
Yeah.
Actually, that in that journey, in and of itself, we start to who I am.
Yeah.
And this is where
we're reliant on others in that, aren't we? So I've got a friend who used to work for Oasis, she's retired now, but she told me the story some years ago now. I mean, she said, I was a bad kid at school. I was really bad. She said, I hated everyone and they hated me. And she said, one day I was in secondary school. She said we had a new head teacher and she was known for being strict. I'd never met her, but everybody said she was a nasty piece of work. And I was thrown out of a lesson. She was always being thrown out of lessons. So here was my friend standing outside another classroom, having been involved in some kind of scuffle, in the middle of a lesson and being thrown out. And this head teacher, this head mistress starts walking towards her down the corridor. She sees her coming. This kid, she's 12. Yeah. She's never had a conversation with this head teacher, never had an encounter with her. She just heard that she was a nasty piece of work and you should stay out of her way. And the head teacher was marching towards her and she reaches this girl, my friend, who's 12 at the time, and she looks at her and she says, "Why are you in the corridor?" And my friend, she said, "Because I hate them, because they're horrible, because my teacher's useless, all this guy." She said, "I was spewing out all this hatred of them and I hate this school. I hate everything about it. I hate everything." And the head teacher just put her arms around her and cried and then let go of her and walked on. And she says that she went home that night at the age of 12. It's many years ago because she's retired now. and she couldn't get to sleep. And she couldn't work out why it was that a woman she'd never met before would cry for her. And she said that was the transformational spiritual awakening moment in her life. She came alive because she realized that she must be worth something. If this woman cried for her, no one had ever done that for her before. She realized she mattered. And she said, I went back to school the next morning and decided I was never going to be thrown out of a lesson again because my head teacher cried for me. Yeah. And she sailed through the rest of school. Yeah. She was transformed by it and became a head teacher with Oasis.
Yeah. So there's this, it's this beautiful thing, isn't it? That our purpose is always made richer through our encounter with the other.
With others.
And seeing others. And that's, we need that. That's what sustains it and builds it.
We're sustained by relationships, I think. I've always been sustained by relationships. But then back to my point about, one man's ceiling is another man's floor. In other words, I'm lousy at it, but invest in other people. You really don't know. Well, in fact, I was on the phone to someone the other morning, Friday morning, I think, and I'd had a conversation with them a couple of days before on the phone. Yeah. And then I had another conversation with them on Friday morning, and they said, Steve, when I talked to you the other morning, you have no idea how near I was to the end of my tether, and talking to you, it just livened me up. And they were so kind about what I said. And do you know, I couldn't even remember what it was. I think, so you never know, do you? Know. Just invest in it, invest in someone, ask them how they are, smile at them, say good morning, all that kind of, who knows?
Yeah, it's brilliant.
The brilliance is in the ordinariness, isn't it?
Exactly. Yeah, the brilliance is in the ordinary. That's what gets us up in the morning. Love it. Thank you.